Hello again, Rich Martin, Senior Technical Marketing Engineer with Itential. And in this session, we are going to talk about how to enable scalable enterprise automation with Itential's platform. The way we've been running these is kind of within the Automation Studio workflow. That's great for building the automations, testing them, but ideally we want to publish them in a catalog. And so we can take this robust automation that we've created in these sessions and make them available very quickly in our platform, so that they can be a catalog entry with RBAC rules and things like that, so that they could be run by groups outside of networking, right? End users, or clients that just need some sort of service as part of what they do. And so not only that, it can, but more important than that, external systems. So things like being able to integrate it with your CI/CD pipeline. So we can make this now an API that's available to be integrated with that through Jenkins and Git. We can also make this a catalog entry into other external systems. So ServiceNow, now instead of running the catalog within our platform, we run that catalog entry in ServiceNow, and it calls the API that runs that workflow. And then also we can run the workflow in response to a event notification through like a Kafka interface, or even through one of many cloud networking, cloud notification systems, CloudTrail in AWS, along with SNS. There's lots of methodologies to do that, but in response to an event, that can also be done very quickly and configured within our platform. So let's get to the demo. So we'll go to part 4 here, and the first thing we'll visit is this is what Karan had as his automation that he added on in part 3. The only change we're going to make here is that while he ran the form as part of his, initiating the demo, it runs a form within the platform. We're actually going to change this, and the input from the data that we're going to get is going to come from ServiceNow. So we'll set this up so that it can run through ServiceNow, and then as a catalog entry in ServiceNow, somebody can now use that to request this new data center service. So let's hop into Operations Manager. Oops, let me get you through here. So in Operations Manager, we can create an automation entry and reference the automation workflow that we built. This automation entry can now be configured in multiple ways that I'll show you when we'll create one. And also, since the Operation Manager manages how these automations can run, it also keeps a track of all kinds of job metrics and things like that. So that's available here as well. But for what we want is to expand the use of this automation. So what we'll do is we'll create a new entry in Operations Manager. I'll call this Data Center. Okay. And the first thing it'll ask us for here is what's the workflow? In this case, we're going to use the demo, the part 4 of this demo workflow. So this is the last bit that we've added to this journey. And now we have the ability to create a trigger. And this particular trigger we want to use, we can use manual. So that means a manual entry we can create to run within our platform. We can reference a form here. Right, that form looks like the form Karan used. Let's see. But the trigger we want to actually set up here is for ServiceNow. And while I won't create one, we actually can do one for for an event-driven like Kafka integrated into this particular demo system. So we'll set up an API trigger here. We'll give it a route for the URL. And then we can create a transformation so that we can take the input from the post command, since it's going to be an HTTPS post, to access the API. And then we can manipulate that data if we need to. I actually have something in the workflow that's doing that already. But we can also have a built-in schema that can validate that data as it comes as well. So we can check to make sure it's in the right format that we expect before we pass it on to the automation workflow that we've built. But not necessarily for this. So I've created this API with its own endpoint. If we were going to do this for something else, like a CI/CD pipeline, we could create another entry, give it another endpoint, so it's a different URL to point to. Well, of note here is we can add as many as we want into here for this particular automation. We can enable it or disable it as we need. But that's essentially it. That's where we publish this so that it can be available through all kinds of different means. So now if I switch over here to ServiceNow, we already have predefined a bunch of catalog entries here within ServiceNow. So I could be Tom, the end user, and I'm going into the ServiceNow catalog. Here's that data center connectivity service. I'm going to pick the right lab box here, IAP instance that we're using. Tom doesn't understand anything about which routers are in Atlanta that this needs to be applied to. That logic can now be built into the automation workflow as part of a process that maybe the network team normally goes through. Which one of these routers should I apply this to? In this case, all Tom cares about is I want it in Atlanta. And then for the interface description, as we said before, we want to make sure it's descriptive. So that's what we've been using as a test. But in this case, that's it. So launched from here, I can now make this request. That gets created in ServiceNow. Now I'm just going to move this progress forward and update it. And now at this point, it's going to call the API that we've published. Now it's just kicking off here. The heart of this is, let's see, demo part 4. So here's the data center connectivity service that we configured. It's now executing demo part 4 and going through all the same process that, that Karen's demonstration did, except we didn't start it from within the platform. We started it from ServiceNow. And now that enterprise, now we can allow this to be used within a catalog outside of our system so that it can be used more and more across the enterprise itself. And so we won't belabor the point, but it is going through the same process and rules and checks and validations. In fact, here's the validation check from previous, went through the pre-check condition. Now it's actually executing the script that Peter onboarded in the first session, and it's going to go through and integrate with, update all the systems that we've integrated with in this workflow. And so with that said, to close it out, you know, the point here is the kind of the key takeaway is we want to meet customers where they're at. Right now where they're at is they have a lot of automation scripts, playbooks, whatnot. In order to expand the ability to be used, putting them in the Itential platform just doesn't give them just a convenient place to run. It allows us to leverage all of these tools we have, along with all of our automation studio tasks, integrations with all these systems, to leverage all of that to build the guardrails before, after the script, allowing multiple teams to be involved in this if necessary, and then to also, you know, do all the integrations with the system and the different systems that are part of you know, a pretty complex network process. And if we look at this, here's what's really interesting in the last closing minutes here. We started off with just a simple shell script, and in the world of network engineers who are just getting into building automations, that is the world, right? Hey, this script does that. Let's continue to add on to the script. But in reality, when you bring it into our platform, we expand that world. We say, here's the ability to leverage these tools, build your pre-checks, build your post-checks. And again, this is the tip of the iceberg, just to give you a taste of it, but then also do these integrations along with all these systems. And now this entire workflow is the world. And what's interesting is, why are we leveraging a script now to make a simple interface change? Is there something native in the platform? Absolutely, we can do that. So that could be flipped over as well. The point being here, the takeaway is, it's about the journey for the customer, being flexible and giving them the options to take in what they've already got, use what's in the platform, and letting them route their journey to enterprise automation.